Red is an adventurer who dreams of opening an apothecary, raising the funds by gathering herbs in the faraway town of Zoltan. Even bandits and monsters leave the place alone, making it the perfect place for him to pursue a quiet life. Before deciding to live at Zoltan, he was Gideon, a member of a hero's party, using the divine blessing of the guide to escort Rudy, the hero, and his little sister. The limitations of his blessing means that he can no longer improve his skills past a certain point, causing Ares, his colleague, to banish him. He's forced to leave all his equipment behind, except for a simple bronze sword. An advantage of his guide blessing is that nearly all his basic skills are maxed out, offering him flexibility as a wild card. One day, Albert, an arrogant adventurer, requests his help to guide them through the mountains so they can slay a recently sighted owlbear. Red has no interest in fame or raising his rank, so he refuses. Later that day, Gans, one of his friends, tells him that Tanta has white eye, a deadly disease that rapidly results in blindness. Despite the risk of being expelled from the Adventurers Guild, Red heads into the mountains to search for the herbs necessary to create a cure. With nobody around, he can freely use his hyperspeed skills to reach the mountains. Once there, he finds the forest ablaze, lit by Albert's party to drive the owlbear out. Red is forced to kill it while gathering what little of the herbs remain. Albert later finds the owlbear's body and takes credit for the kill, but he notices a strange cut along its chest. With Red's help, Tanta is cured, and as a reward, Gans offers to build his apothecary free of charge. 4 months later, Zoltan celebrates the opening of Red's new shop. Meanwhile, an adventurer named Rit arrives. Red's business is slow, and he laments that he may soon go bankrupt. Rit, the princess of the Duchy of Lagurvia, visits Red at his new apothecary. She explains that she fled her hometown to avoid a power struggle and decided to become an adventurer until things calmed down. Red is glad to see a familiar face, and the two reminisce about old times. They used to fight alongside each other when Red was still Gideon. They first met at Alanon, a small town in Lagurvia, where he witnessed her take down a drunken patron. Rit believes that her duchy has no need for heroes, and they will fight as they always have, with their own strength. One day, as the Demon Lord's army laid siege to their city, Rit suggested that she take a band of adventurers to raid the enemy's supply dumps, cutting off their main supply artery. Her master, the Duke of Lagurvia, is the only one to support her move. However, it was all a trap, as her master is actually Sinsandin, a general in the Demon Lord's army. Red and Rudy arrive just in time to rescue her, but the incident leaves her traumatized. Red eventually manages to encourage her to fight on, because if she does not, then her duchy's last memory will be of bitter defeat. Back in the present, Rit insists on working for and living at Red's shop, which he reluctantly accepts. He shows her his two original creations, a potion that multiplies another potion's effects, and a new type of painkiller that is less addictive than normal. Although Rit sees the potion as possibly catastrophic to the economy, she senses potential in the painkiller. Meanwhile, Ares recruits Tis, an assassin, to be Red's replacement. She meets Danon, a martial artist, and Theodora, a crusader. Red and Rit go shopping for a new bed and visit Stormthunder, a goblin carpenter. Red reflects that although everyone receives divine blessings, the only way to level them up is to kill another with a blessing. They later encounter Tanta with his friend Al, who are being bullied by a boy named Ademi. Red chases him away and tends to Al's wounds. The kids complain that Ademi was never this aggressive, and Red explains that when a person receives their blessing, it can influence how they act. Rit's blessing, for example, is the Spirit Scout, inclining her to a life of freedom. He concludes that Ademi likely received the bar-brawling blessing, causing him to fight to solve problems. When he learns that Al received the Weapon Master blessing, he praises such a rare skill and reassures him that one could learn to control the influence of their blessing. Red and Rit then visit the guild to get their new painkiller approved, but they are turned away by Dan, the head manager. Rit uses her connections with a powerful person to get approval instead, but they learn that another painkiller was recently approved, and it is far more addictive. When they return home, Red comes up with a new way to administer bitter medicine and vitamins, by baking them into delicious cookies. Rit works hard to promote them in town, and although sales are slow at first, they eventually sell out. Red is overjoyed at his newfound success and credits Rit for all her help. Meanwhile, Danon blames Ares for driving away Red, pointing out that they never had supply problems when he was around. He volunteers to search for him, and Rudy gives him permission. He then talks with Theodora and Yarandala, a former member of the party who left in outrage after Red was banished. But Danon is confident that Red still lives, and he is hopeful about bringing him back. Red is perfectly content with living a quiet life in a village and would never have imagined he'd be spending it with Rit. Many adventurers are surprised that Rit, hailed as the champion of Zoltan, is working as an assistant at Red's shop. While Rit is always buying mead, Albert drops by the store. He suspects Red of being the true killer of the owlbear, but Red denies it. Albert threatens him with a blade to his neck, but he incurs the wrath of Rit, who nearly kills Albert in retaliation. She yells at him to get out, and Red reassures her that he is unharmed. That night, they have a candlelit dinner, and they make plans to visit the local sauna the next day. However, Red's visit devolves into an endurance contest with Gons and Storm Thunder. "It's like a sauna in here," the goblin says. Gons eventually passes out from a heat stroke, and they pull him out to recover. Zeph, the sauna owner, laments that he might be forced to close his business after a new sauna opened nearby. It has indoor pools, a restaurant, and is far more luxurious than his. To try and help, Red gathers some potpourri into a sack and presents it to Zeph to add to his sauna. While Red tests out the new sauna, Now and Rit suddenly enter, and they insist on having him join them. However, when the pair begin praising what a nice man he is, he faints from embarrassment. The potpourri bath is a hit, attracting enough customers to keep Zeph's business afloat. Red has another endurance contest with the boys, and this time, it is Storm Thunder who bites the dust. Later on, Rit reveals the real reason why she was craving mead. Back in Lagurvia, a newlywed couple would drink mead on their first night together and go on a month-long honeymoon. The Adventurers Guild attempts to recruit Rit back, but she is adamant about staying with Red. Likewise, a member of the Thieves Guild tries to bribe Red with an extremely valuable elven coin, but he rebuffs them. He later gives Rit an amber bracelet and says his next gift will contain her favorite gemstone. Meanwhile, the Thieves Guild sends Dia to try and blackmail Rit, since her being allowed to do as she pleases is bad for business. In a flashback, Rit is forced to request help from the neighboring duchy of Sunland after the Demon Lord lays siege to Lagurvia. She is accompanied through the perilous bewitching woods by Red and his party, where she grows jealous of his close relationship with Yarandala, a high elf. During a rest stop, Rit is surprised to learn that Yarandala is not romantically interested in Red. She explains that as a near-immortal elf, she has made it a rule not to fall in love with humans. Instead, she encourages Rit to pursue Red herself. When they reach the outskirts of the forest, they are surprised to see Demon Lord scouts lying in wait, a result of Ares' mistake. Red and Yarandala agree to serve as a diversionary force, allowing Rudy to smash through their vanguard. Rit is shocked to see the hero's bloody and cold way of fighting, but is equally surprised by her sibling love of Red. She decided to stay behind to help rebuild Lagurvia, but also to avoid getting in the way of Rudy and her brother. Back in the present, Rit makes a delivery and is approached by Deer, who threatens to tell Lagurvia her location. However, she does not care if she gives up her royal status. All she wants is to stay with Red. Meanwhile, Rudy recalls her bloody outburst against Ares after he drove away Red. Although she feels empty without her brother, she must continue, because she is the hero. He and Rit head to the nearby river to swim and have a barbecue, which ends with Rit giving him a small kiss.
That's how close I want us to be.
Meanwhile, the hero's party reaches a desert tomb, which Ares claims houses the demon weapon they seek. As they make camp, Tis learns that Rudy does not sleep, although her hero blessing gives her immunity to disease, fatigue, and environmental hazards. It also robs her of things unnecessary to her mission, such as her emotions. Later, an injured man bursts into Red's shop, and he asks Rit to investigate. She finds the town under attack by a frenzied Campbell, one of Albert's party members. She attacks him and his grunts, but it is Albert who kills him. When she later reports this to Red, he finds the incident disturbing, but he decides not to interfere. Al and Tanta drop by for dinner, and he learns that Al has finally awakened his weapon master blessing. Al then trains with Red, and afterwards he asks why he remains a D-rank adventurer despite being so skilled. Red replies that he is satisfied with his current life and says there is nothing wrong with deciding a life of adventure is not for you. A few days later, Red and Rit soak together in a tub. Rit asks if he is sure about his decision not to rejoin Rudy, but he replies that his place is by her side. Rudy and Tis abandon their party and board the airship, leaving behind Theodora and Ares. A few hours earlier, she receives a sample of Demon's Blessing from Belial, who told her that it could greatly aid in her quest to defeat the Demon King. Realizing it can weaken her blessing's power, she uses this chance to go against its impulses. Wanting a steadier supply, she and Tis pose as ordinary travelers and travel to Zoltan, where its manufacturer Godwin is held prisoner. Meanwhile, the harsh winter snow means less customers for Red. Following Rit's advice, he develops hand warmers for the locals, which prove to be popular. The pair later walk home in the snow, and while resting together by a bench, they share a kiss. The next day, Rudy and Tis take up aliases and forcibly cross a bridge after defeating Otto, a knight attempting to extort travelers. Red passes by the same bridge a few hours later and beats Otto again. After having dinner by a roadside shack, he meets Tis, unaware that she is traveling with Rudy. The two size each other up and both sense that the other is a person of high caliber. Red and Rit pay a house visit to Yundine, a forest spirit under the effects of a curse. He gives her some medicine to end its effects, but Rit suspects that there may be a powerful mage causing her magic to go haywire. The next day, the pair hear of Logurvian hand warmers being sold by a local apothecary. They pay it a visit, and Rudy is overjoyed to see her brother once again. Rudy clears up the misunderstanding of why Red left and invites him to return, but he insists on remaining in Zoltan. Rit soon arrives and is just as shocked to see Rudy. She asks Red what he plans to do, and he reassures her that he plans to stay. Rudy tells them not to worry since she intends to move to Zoltan. She later suffers a sharp pain in her chest for going against the hero's blessing's urgings, prompting her to wolf down several heaps of Demon's Blessing. Later, Rudy and Tis have a misunderstanding due to the former's lack of emotions. Tis realizes that the hero is just misunderstood and strives to communicate better with her. She lets her pet Mr. Crawly Wally, her spider. The next day, Red brings Rudy to town so he can introduce her to the locals. They stop by Zeph's sauna, where she turns heads for her strange demeanor. Despite this, Red is very proud of Rudy, who secretly wishes this day would last forever. She later joins Rit in the baths and explains that for as long as she can remember, Red has been her pillar of support, through thick and thin. She explains that since she can no longer experience the sensations of a warm bath or the taste of milk, she clings to how she felt about them in the past. She is jealous of people like Rit, who are free to express their emotions however they wish. Realizing her anguish, Tis and Rit agreed to help save her. Later, Rit says that she was scared to lose Red and the home they've built together, but he reassures her that he isn't going anywhere. That night, they become one in bed. As they lay together, they look forward to a life of peace and quiet. The next day, he walks Rudy around town, introducing her to the locals and buying her a small brooch. They lay down by a riverbank, and Rudy thanks Red for always being by her side. They fall asleep in the cool breeze, here in the town of Zoltan that they've made their home.